له فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So the theme of this Dawrah is centered around the trials that a Muslim faces, and especially living in the environment that we find ourselves in. The trials and the challenges are multiplied because of that. So throughout today's lectures, inshallah ta'ala, you will see the speakers touching upon various aspects, various issues, various elements, and giving advice. So what I want to do in my lecture is to try to give you something by which you can tie all of these ends together. To tie them all together, and so that in the form of an analogy, so that you have a practical way or a practical method with which you can protect your Iman, protect your belief, protect your Tawheed, protect your Iman. And so this is what we will be working towards, insha'Allah ta'ala, in the course of this lecture. So we begin with the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, in which He says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ من الذهب والفضة. In this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says that beautified to men, beautified to mankind, is the love of desires. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions 7 categories or 7 things of women, of children, of offspring, of pieces or bits or collections or gatherings of gold and silver. Gold and silver. Women, children, gold, silver. And continues, وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ, which is horses, branded horses, وَالْأَنْعَامِ, which is cattle, وَالْحَرْثِ, which is the tillage that you take out of the land. So what I want to focus here, what I want to take out of this is, let's take one of the most precious things which is mentioned in this list, which is gold. Gold. So if you imagine, so these things have been beautified in the hearts of people. People love these things. They are beautified and they bring pleasure to people. So let's take gold from these things, and let's imagine now that in your house you have 1,000 coins of gold. So in your house right now there are 1,000 coins of gold. What's the price of gold right now per ounce? Anybody know? £1,100? Does anybody agree or disagree? Is it 1,100? It's about 1,000. It's 1,000. So £1,000 is the value of 1 ounce of gold. So that 1,000, that collection of 1,000 coins of 1 ounce coins that you have in your house right now is worth £1 million. That's £1 million. So with your knowledge that you have this treasure in your house, this valuable treasure, I don't think there would be a single person sitting in this room except that he's thinking in the back of his head, there's 1,000 gold coins in my house. Right? It's in the back of his head. Right? He's worried, he's concerned, he's thinking about it, protecting it, preserving it, right? From thieves, from whatever else. When he's on a journey, he's thinking about it. When he's asleep at night in the bed, thinking. Because that's a tremendous amount of wealth. When you have £1 million in your house, that is going to play on your mind throughout the day, whether you like it or not. So, the point being here that this treasure or this thing which Allah Azza wa Jal has put an affinity for these things in the hearts of the people. These are the types of things that people have an affinity for. And if you possess these things, like the example here of the 1,000 gold coins, you know that this would be in your mind. It would be in your mind. However, on Yawmul Qiyamah, these things will be of no avail. They will be of no benefit. So when a person who is upon disbelief, he comes, it will be said, anyone who comes upon disbelief, فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمْ مِلْءُ الْأَرْضِ ذَهَبًا, that it will not be accepted from any one of them, مِلْءُ الْأَرْضِ, an earth full of gold. If you come on Yawm al-Qiyamah with no Iman, then even an earth full of gold will not be accepted from you. It will not be accepted. And even if a person ransoms himself by way of an earth full of gold, it will not be accepted. And likewise on a day, قُلْ يَوْمَ الْفَتْحِ لَا يَنْفَعُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِيمَانُهُمْ, that on the day of Al-Fath, which is the day of resurrection and reckoning, those who disbelieve, their Iman on that day will be of no benefit. وَلَا هُمْ يُنظَرُونَ, nor will they be given any respite. So, the point that's being made here is that something which is of great, tremendous value and loved by the people, like gold, for example, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, this will be of no benefit whatsoever. In contrast to the issue of gold, we see that Allah Azza wa Jal has also made beautified and made dear in the heart something else. And what is this thing? It is Iman. وَلَكِنْ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. So the same thing that was mentioned about those 7 things from which is gold, that men have love, حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ, and it has been made beautified, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ. You see, the same 2 words are mentioned in this ayah. وَلَكِنْ اللَّهِ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Allah has made Iman to be endeared or beloved in your hearts. He's made you to like it and love it. And He has beautified it, adorned it in your hearts. Now this Iman, in contrast to the gold, when you come with this Iman on Yawm al-Qiyamah, this Iman will save you. It will give you light. It will give you direction and guidance on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions about the believers on Yawm al-Qiyamah, يَوْمَ لَا يُخْزِي اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ. On the day that Allah will not humiliate the Prophet or disgrace the Prophet and those who are with him. نُورُهُمْ يَسْعَى بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَبِأَيْمَانِهِمْ. Their light will proceed in front of them and by their side, by the right, to the end of the ayah. So this nur, as Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah explains, this is the nur of Iman. This is the nurul Iman, and the diya, the light, the illumination of Iman. And so this, when a person brings this Iman on Yawm al-Qiyamah, something which Allah also beautified in the hearts of people, in the hearts of the believers, that is, then this will avail a person, this will save a person. So the point being we are contrasting between something like gold that the people are attached to, and which if they possessed in abundant amounts, they would think about it in the day, in the night, in the evening, worried about its loss, worried about its decline, worried about its theft. But it will avail nothing on Yawm al-Qiyamah. On the other hand, we see that al-Iman, Allah has also beautified this in the hearts of the people. And on Yawm al-Qiyamah, it will save an individual from the hellfire. So the connection that's being made here is, do you ask yourself the question that if you had 1,000 ounces of gold in your house right now, under the bed or whatever your secret location is, do you have the same concern? Do you have the same fear of losing that as you do with respect to your Iman? Do you think about it? Would you think about it? Be truthful to yourself and ask yourself this question and answer yourself truthfully internally inside. That if you had 1,000 ounces of gold, you know that every day when you wake up and you go through your day's activities, and when you go to sleep, when you go to bed, you know that that's on your mind. Because no one has that amount of wealth in the house. And it worries you, it concerns you. You are fearful. Now ask yourself, the Iman which you possess when you wake up in the morning and when you reach the evening, do you have the same fear for that? Do you feel the same way about this Iman? Knowing the contrast between the gold on Yawm al-Qiyamah and earths full of gold and al-Iman. So this is something for you to think about. So this leads us now to the second part, which is that the Salaf, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they understood the point which has just been made. And that's why you see them speaking about this topic in their books. And that's why you see narrations from the ayat in the Quran, and then from ahadith, and then from the statements of the Sahaba, and then from the statements of the Salaf. So let's bring something in respect to that from the book of Al-Imam Ibn Battah rahimahullah, from his book Al-Ibana. In the volume pertaining to Iman, he has a chapter called Bab Al-Imanu Khawfun wa Raja'un. Chapter pertaining to faith and how it is fear and hope. It consists of fear and hope. So he says, وَتَخَوَّفُ الْعُقَلَاءِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ سَلْبَ الْإِيمَانِ وَخَوْفِهِمُ النِّفَاقِ عَلَى مَنْ أَمِنَ ذَلِكَ عَلى نَفْسِهِ بِذَلِكَ نَزَلَ الْقُرْآنِ وَجَاءَتْ بِهِ السُّنَّةِ. He says that the intelligent people, they fear the intelligent from the believers. Right? So there are the believers, but then there are the intelligent believers. The intelligent amongst the believers, they fear that Iman should be robbed from them, that it should be stripped or negated from them. And they fear hypocrisy. They fear that anyone who feels safe from hypocrisy, or who felt secure about himself and about his faith, then they felt hypocrisy for that person. They feared that this is hypocrisy. If you walk around, think about it. Let's go back to the same example. If you had all of that gold in your house and you walked around as if, and you know that you are living in an area where there are predators and thieves and looters, and these people know that you have treasure, how would you feel having no fear or concern? Of course you wouldn't. You would be behaving hypocritically in accordance with what you know, with what you possess. So in the same way, when you do not have any fear for your Iman, then hypocrisy is feared for that person. So he says, with this, meaning with this thinking, with this, that a person should have this state and condition, this is what the Quran was revealed with, and what the Sunnah has come with. Meaning that the Quran and the Sunnah indicate that a believer should have this type of fear and concern. So from the ayat in the Quran, he mentions, we'll just mention just one of them for the sake of brevity. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, أولئك الذين يدعون يبتغون إلى ربهم الوسيلة أيهم أقرب ويرجون رحمته ويخافون عذابه. Mentioning that those are the ones who call and they seek their Lord, they seek a means of needless to their Lord to see which of them is closest to Him. They fear, they hope in His mercy and they fear His punishment. The focus being here upon the fear. وَيَخَافُونَ عَذَابَهُ. I'll mention the other verses because they also add to this meaning. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. Describing the believers that their sides forsake their beds and they call upon their Lord out of fear and out of hope. And one more ayah, أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ سَاجِدًا وَقَائِمًا يَحْذَرُ الْآخِرَةَ وَيَرْجُو رَحْمَةَ رَبِّهِ. Is the one who stands during the night prostrating, the one who is devout through the night prostrating, and who stands fearing the hereafter, having caution against the hereafter, and hoping in the mercy of his Lord, like the one who does not do that. So these three ayat, Ibn Battah, he brings them to indicate the state of being that a believer has with respect to his Iman. And then he mentions a series of narrations, and I'll quickly summarize them for the sake of brevity. From them is the statement of Abu Idris al-Khawlani rahimahullah. He brings his chain of narration and he says, Ma ala dhahriha min basharin. There is not upon the face of the earth a single man لا يخاف على إيمانه إلا ذهب. There is no man on the face of this earth who does not fear for his Iman except that it will go. It will go. It will depart from him. And likewise, the statement of Abu ad-Darda, there's a long narration, and the narration is as follows: that one day he was sitting, radiyallahu anhu, admonishing the people against Ad-Dajjal. And he said, so he's sitting in the gathering and Abu ad-Darda is in the gathering and he's warning the gathering of Ad-Dajjal. So the narrator, who is Al-Harith bin Muawiyah, he says, I thought to myself, and I said to myself, Wallahi, there is something besides Dajjal that I fear for myself, greater. And so he said, what is it? What is it that you fear greater than Dajjal in yourself? He said, indeed, I fear that my Iman is removed from me whilst I do not know, whilst I am unaware. That your Iman is taken from you whilst you are not aware. And so, in response to this, Abu Darda said, may your mother belong to Allah. Do you see that amongst the people there is even just 100 who fear the likes of what you fear? In other words, when he said what he said, that he fears for his Iman being lost more than that he fears at Dajjal, then Abu Darda said to him in amazement and in response that he said, do you find that amongst the people there's even 100 who fear like what you fear? Like in this gathering now, And the example which I gave you of the gold and the Iman, and the answer that you should have given to yourself, whether you feared the loss of gold more than that you fear for the Iman. Is there in this room even 100 or 10 or 50 who fear the likes of this for their Iman more than they fear Ad-Dajjal, let alone fear the loss of the gold? So this is the point that he's making. So then he continues, to Allah, may your mother belong to Allah, meaning may your mother be bereaved and return back to Allah. Do you find amongst the people even 50 who fear the likes of what you fear? Then he went down to 10. Then he went down to 3. And then he said finally, Wallahi ma amina rajulun qat an yuslaba imanuh illa salabahu. That no man ever feels secure for his Iman, like he starts feeling secure and feels, safe, except that his Iman will be stripped of him. Except that his Iman will be taken of him. So this really is an introduction to introduce the talk, which is that every single believer should be fearful of losing his Iman and losing his faith, and he should therefore to strive to try and perfect his faith and to guard his faith. And so in this lecture, what I want to do is to give you a parable or an analogy with which to look at things that take place around you and have an idea as to how to protect your Iman, to look at all the various challenges that you face and which you need to be aware of in order to protect your Iman. So at this point in the talk, you should now be aware that every believer, if he does not fear for his Iman, then he will lose it. It will disappear from him, whether he likes it or not. So every believer has to wake in the morning thinking about his Iman, fearing for his Iman, fearing for his faith, and thinking about the various challenges that he will face throughout the day till he goes to sleep. Because a time will come, as you know in the ahadith, a time will come when a person will wake up in the morning a believer, and he will reach the evening a disbeliever. Or he will reach the evening as a believer and wake in the morning as a disbeliever, because of the trials and tribulations, right? So, the parable that we want to give, we want to make an analogy, because analogies help us to remember. They help us to connect things.